competition itself is a whole session that we would like to have with you, if you don't mind, because we believe that competition is not working for people because we are tied to a bank in multiple ways, and it's not easy to shift. But I want to just take advantage and start with one question. You talked about this Sybil story, and I found it quite horrifying that there was a mistake, people got notices, and from what we know, and people come here to our helpline, the process of getting that redressed it's a nightmare. So here's a case where obviously it came to the RBI. What action was taken? Which was the bank? What happened to Sybil? Was it done at a larger level? Was there any compensation for the people who were harassed? There must have been so many people who couldn't go abroad, who were denied a loan, who were denied a credit card in that period. Was it all just collateral damage and they had to keep quiet? Or did something happen?
Okay. Now, taking that question, what was done was, as a class action, Sybil was directed to set up a grievance redressal machinery. Again, that was a gap in the regulations. The gap in the regulation was when the credit information company rules were framed. Everything was covered except the availability of a grievance redressal mechanism at the Sybil level. Because what was thought was that this is the data that is coming from the banks and it would be uploaded in a seamless way in a STP model and there would not be very severe problems. But as far as this particular individual's case was concerned, this one was rectified. He was given all the expenses that he had incurred for following up the matter with the bank and the Sybil. The bank was asked to reimburse that, and the bank which had relied on that Sybil report was also requested to consider his loan, and it was approved and sanctioned. Here let me tell you two things. In banking there are two things. One is to err is human. And second principle that goes, which no banker honors, is to confess is divine. Okay. So the rules always say, like even in the Ombudsman's office, not only here, globally, what they say is, if a particular case has been decided, then if you notice that there are similar other cases which people have not complained about, then you need to take corrective action in those cases even if the person has not complained. That is what we say, to confess is divine. So that doesn't happen. And the Ombudsman can't do it because Ombudsman cannot initiate action suo moto unless there is a complaint. So the Sybil related kind of things and the other class action where we succeeded for the benefit of pensions. See, I did a detailed study on pensions. I went to State Bank of India after the CPC, that is the Central Pension Processing Cells, were set up. There are 28 of them across the country. Each bank has one. So I went to State Bank of India, found out the entire process. And then at the end of it, we came to the conclusion that if it is beyond 45 days, the person needs to be compensated, and he will be compensated at bank rate plus 1.5%. That is 7.5 plus 1.5, 9%. That is based on full study that is carried out. Because there is nothing, no paperwork involved. Everything is automated. The pension payment orders are there, the fixation is there. The moment you claim it, you are claiming reimbursement from RBI, from the concerned department. The RBI is paying you 65 rupees. The government is paying you 65 rupees for every pension transaction to the bank which is disbursing. So that compensation class action was upheld. We got class action there also. Yes, ma'am. Yeah.
My question is about the MCLR issue. The MCLR was supposed to come into effect from 1st April 2016.
It has come into effect already.
It has come to effect, but how many banks have actually implemented? I filed 14 RTIs with 14 different banks.
No. See, I'll tell you. MCLR has been accepted. All the banks have implemented it. What the Reserve Bank has told the banks is you carry out a review of it at quarterly intervals and put across. See, some banks, what they have done, have been proactive as and when the changes have occurred. They have reflected them, changed, and the changes have been very marginal. Like HDFC has tinkered with it in 0.1%, that is 10 basis points. The biggest change has been by SBI, 25 basis points. Okay, that too in the lowering of the interest rates. Okay, so the MCLR as a discipline has come into place.
It has come into place. My question is, when did it come into place? Because Janak Raj report has admitted that The MCLR was not practiced by the banks, particularly the public sector banks, for as late as 1 year from the date of its implementation.
I'll tell you, I was in that committee. Please.
The private sector banks did it in 6 months. Fine. Now the MCLRs are declared every month. Every bank does it. Every bank does declare it from the time they actually adopted that. Fine. How many banks have actually passed on the MCLR benefits to the clients? That is a black box. And my inquiries with different bankers go to the extent saying that 50 to 60% borrowers are still on base rate. 10 to 15% borrowers are still on BPLR. And only those who ask for it have got them.
At a price.
State Bank had charged a price of 0.5% minimum, maximum 10,000.
Switch over charges.
Switchover charges. Actually, the Reserve Bank circular was quiet on this front, and therefore the banks have taken the advantage. Second thing is that the banks have taken a stand that this being a change in the benchmark, it needs acceptance by both the parties to the contract, and therefore until the customer agrees to it, we will not give it. Now the customer doesn't know it because it is never written to him that it is changed, the benchmark had changed. The banks keep on sending SMSs for every small things, but they don't bother to send an SMS saying that this benchmark had changed from this to this. And because of that, my estimate, I have worked on an estimate, and my estimate says at least 30,000 crore rupees of interest for every 1% denial of benefit. For every 1% denial, 30,000 crores is the minimum that could be extracted, that is being extracted from the borrowers.
Okay.
Now this is.
So now let me come to it. See, point is base rate or MCLR. This is only a methodology. Okay. This is only a methodology of arriving at the rate. Okay. Now, it doesn't change the benchmark rate by itself. What changes the benchmark rate is the derivative. Okay, how we have worked out. Okay. Now, the only difference between base rate and MCLR was the cost of deposits. Okay, here we took the marginal cost of deposits, there we took the total cost of deposits for working out the component. So when you looked at the marginal cost of deposits, for the private sector banks it worked because the deposit interest rate cycle was on the downhill. In the base rate, if you find, they were more expensive. The private banks were more expensive because their duration of the deposit portfolio is shorter. So the marginal cost worked for them. Now for these banks, now let me tell you, there is this BCSBI code of commitment to customers. It clearly says that interest rates and changes in interest rates will be communicated to you and will come into effect at least 30 days after they have been changed, after you have been intimated. And the mode of intimation is by way of publicity in the newspaper, notice at the branch, SMS or email. Any one of them according to the choice of the borrower.
Choice of the borrower.
Yeah. Any one of them.
But you know, we have a case here.
Any one of them according to the choice of the borrower. This is Article 7 of the BCSBI code.
But your banking ombudsman has thrown out a case where a guy called Satyam Savla discovered there was a difference of 5%, and the banking ombudsman accepted HDFC's claim that we had put it up on our website and we had informed. So without so much as a discussion, they listened to it and they've closed the case without appeal.
No, they can. He can still go in appeal. No problem.
No, they are not allowing it.
No, not allowing. No. He can always represent in the sense saying, this is what I believe to be this one. So as far as this one is concerned, the MCLR changes in the banks. There is a problem for the public sector banks when the interest rates are going down drastically because they have already lowered the deposit rates. Okay. Now, if they have to lower the advances rates also, it doesn't happen in the same proportion as would happen.
Happens with a delay of 6 months.
So Now the time frame is always given. This MCLR thing came in operation in 17. It was supposed to come in operation from 16.
April 16.
It came in operation from 17.
Correct.
Because the data fields also had to be captured for all the banks, different banks. They had to work it out. Okay, from 17 it has come into, because I was on the committee with Anand Sinha as the chairman, which recommended this particular mechanism, going away from refinements in the base rate to come to the, but we didn't say MCLR specifically, I'll tell you. What we said was, it should be the cost of deposits. Because if I'm saying MCLR, I shouldn't be seen as favoring a particular kind of bank. See, when I was saying MCLR, see, that's what the Ram Mohan committee had clearly underlined, that it should be ownership neutral. See, when I'm saying MCLR, am I there to favor the private banks? No, I'm there to favor the customer.
So in which case, if there is 125 and 150 basis points in reduction of interest rate or benchmark repo rate, and there's only a 10 basis point reduction in
See, that has always happened. It has always happened. See,
that is
look at
justified according to you?
No, see, I'll tell you, the way it has to be looked at is how it is getting reflected in the deposit rates and the yields on the GSEC. That tells a very interesting story. Now, if you look at it, a government sovereign paper is supposed to be the most risk-free instrument in the economy.
But little while ago you said if there's a new borrower who is getting a lower rate and all the previous...
Correct, that's for the floating rate. That's for the floating.
Only floating rate.
Correct. So automatically it has to be revised to that level.
So in which case all the banks are in violation in that case, the principle that you're talking about.
Kindly, if there are such aberration, kindly take it up with the RBI. They'll set it right.
But this is available to everybody, all these details.
I'll tell you, because if it is the same category of borrower, if the loan is for the same purpose, if today I am sanctioning it at 8.25 in floating rate, then all the other floating rates will have to be in alignment with the same. It cannot be different.
Absolutely open secret. Everybody is talking about it that it's not. Even the RBI can see it's not.
I had written a letter to RBI with 22 points mentioning all the facts which I had discovered from the 14 RTIs which I had filed. Now there was no reply to that that letter. First thing. Second thing, the calculation of MCLR denoted in the MCLR circular, the formula is wrong. No, it is wrong.
Could be.
It is mathematically wrong. It is mathematically wrong. And the third thing is that the banks which were supposed to give this MCLR, you will see that whether it is a UCO bank or it is a HDFC bank, where the CASA proportion is very much different, where the maximum term deposit rates are at 6%, why the MCLRs can be, how the MCLRs can be at 8.65%.
No, see, that's what I said.
There is absolutely a rigged methodology in calculating the MCLRs.
See, not rigged. What happens is, typically, if you look at it, the marginal cost varies depending on and what cycle that particular bank is going through.
Sir, the marginal cost, if you take, it is all the more reasons that it should come down. Because
see, I'll tell you,
the latest rates have fallen.
Not all the banks have reduced. In fact, if you look at SBI latest,
deposit rates I'm talking about.
That's
sir.
what. See, it's based on deposit rates only, marginal cost of deposits.
Yeah.
If you look at it, not many banks were able to reduce their long-term deposit rates as much as some leading, say, State Bank of India or this one was able to do. If you look at the cost, because the reason for it is simple to understand. When the advances growth was at 14% and the deposit growth was only at 10%, there was no way they were able to fund the resources or the gap. So they were not able to reduce the deposit rates. Especially the banks that you are talking of, UCO Bank or this one, they were not able to reduce the rates.
No, fine, that's okay.
So the
I'm coming to the differential between the maximum deposit rate and the minimum lending rate. There is a differential of 4 to 5% in that.
No. See, what
maximum
happens
deposit rate is 6%. Having CASA at 40%, your average weighted average deposit rate is at 4%.
If you look at the MCLR calculations, what it says is the tenor premium and the load factor for the administration and the provision requirements. They are the three components beyond MCLR.
Load factor for the administration is not there now in the MCLR new definition.
Not that. If you look at the 4 factors to be added there, it covers it in the what earlier in the base rate we called, it covers that. So if you're looking at even net interest margins also, NIMs as reported by banks, Today for the industry as a whole, we are somewhere at around 3.3%.
3.5.
3.3%.
Yeah.
Okay. So that is the reason in India, because despite use of technology, the point again that I am making is our cost of intermediation has not come down, which is
Sir,
around
as far as
2.5% in advanced countries. Our cost of intermediation, that is cost of raising deposits to lend, it has not come down. And that is the reason why the NIM continues at 3.5 to 3.3.
My calculation says that their administrative cost is covered to the extent of 75% by the non-banking business of the banks. Yeah. Okay, fine.
No, I'll tell you, if for the industry as a whole, the target is that it should be brought down to 2.5. That is what the industry and the government are targeting. The cost of intermediation to be brought down to 2.5. And this is also attributable to the business mix. As I said, when you have 60% branches in 64 cities and others are almost like at 0%, not contributing anything, cost of operations are higher. That is the reason the intermediation costs are not coming down. Because we have, say, almost 40,000 rural and semi-urban branches which are stagnating, where the growth is just equivalent to the interest credited to the SB accounts or the FD account. There is no extra growth. Not that the centers are not growing, but they have also reached the stagnation levels.
Have you finished with that?
Yeah.
Okay, my question may be in two parts, maybe three. I'll take it step by step. If I understand you correctly, there is obviously banking ombudsman appointed by the RBI within RBI. My understanding has been of late that because of the sheer volume of complaints coming into RBI had suggested that each bank should have what they call an internal ombudsman. Maybe it's not the right word, but SSC or something or the other.
CCSO.
Okay, yeah. So each bank, including presumably I understand the private bank, should appoint an internal banking ombudsman. So the question is, should we always go to internal ombudsman first before actually applying to the RBI ombudsman? Because my understanding was that RBI would not even consider the complaint unless you've been through the process internally with the banking ombudsman. So is my understanding correct?
Okay. Now, the CCSO, the internal ombudsman, basically was to bridge two gaps. One is, when the complaints came to the RBI, we had the concept of the pecuniary jurisdiction. So there was a section of the consumers and the customers of banks which said, what about us? We are not covered by the ombudsman scheme because we are falling beyond the pecuniary jurisdiction. So we said, have a chief customer service officer who is in the nature of an internal ombudsman who will cover all the customers, irrespective of whether the customer or his complaint is covered under the RBI scheme or not. So they should have an independent third party within the bank who is able to deal with all the complaints. Secondly, when it is brought to the notice of the RBI ombudsman, it is believed that internally it has been escalated to the internal ombudsman, and the final resolution after it has not been agreed to by the bank and the customer, then only the case has come to the RBI ombudsman.
So actually my understanding is correct. You must first go to the bank itself and make the complaint via the internal ombudsman. Second part of the question is, are they therefore obliged to actually publish the contact name and address or the contact details of the internal ombudsman on the website or some prominent place?
Now, the first level of grievance, wherever you go, the customer touch point, as we call it these days, it is not the branch, it is the customer touch point, wherever you go. The first level of grievance redressal machinery and then the escalation, both have to be indicated. And it goes right up to the chairman.
Well, up to the nodal office usually.
No, there are again three levels of nodal officer. One is at the regional level, one is at the principal level, and the internal ombudsman is over and above the nodal officer.
And now the last part of the question therefore is that when you've gone through the entire process and right up to the stage and it got stuck up, is it true or is the understanding from RBI that the address and the contact details of the internal ombudsman may not be divulged to the complainant or the customer in general, and they themselves will take the complaint to the internal ombudsman, seek his views, and then whatever the direction and the views are conveyed will be conveyed back to the complainant? So
No,
that
not necessarily.
there is no access whatsoever to the complainant to the internal ombudsman?
Not necessarily. He is as much a part of the grievance redressal setup as anybody else, because even the ombudsman appointed by RBI, if need be, he is required to call the parties and hear them out. Same thing is true about the internal ombudsman. Okay.
So maybe I could have a supplementary in that when you cannot gain access, you do not know the name of the ombudsman, you do not know how to.
Which bank?
Yeah. No, I don't wish to divulge all this at the moment.
No, you can just address it to the internal ombudsman of that bank first, because
How do you address it? Because
It doesn't have the name.
no, I'll tell you.
Name, number, anything.
I'll tell you. The Reserve Bank of India, in its Master Circular on Customer Service, has given the names of banks which have been advised to have internal ombudsman. It is not that all the banks have internal ombudsman. Right now, they are gone by the size of the banks. So they have.
What would you say? What would you say if I got a written reply from bank's officer, responsible officer, who say that we are not necessarily going to publish the name of the internal ombudsman. Whatever complaints you have, we shall take it to the internal ombudsman, seek his views, and whatever he conveys will be binding to us, and that will be conveyed to you.
Oh, fine, good enough. See, so far as the point is, if you then complain, and if they revert to you and they say, this has also been vetted or approved by the internal ombudsman, that suffices your cause.
But what happens if they don't even take the complaint then?
No, that's for you to check up with them. Then you can appeal. See, there is also the appeal process there, even for the internal ombudsman. Even because if the nodal officer has offered you, suppose a compromise, you are not agreeing to it. You can say, okay, I want to go to the internal ombudsman, provided that bank has an internal ombudsman. Because right now there are only 10 banks which have been authorized, which have been advised to have the internal ombudsman by the size of the scale of operations. Not all the banks have been told to have internal ombudsman. So you can always say, this is the representation to the internal ombudsman, or you can directly write to the RBI ombudsman saying, this is a reply I have got and I am not satisfied whether the bank has taken it to the internal ombudsman or not. And all this within after 30 days of having written to the bank.
Does cooperative bank comes under the ombudsman?
Only the scheduled cooperative banks come under the ombudsman. Not all.
And
Then where the complaint is to be lodged?
Where? Same, ombudsman. Like,
But ombudsman says cooperative banks are not.
no. See, for the cooperative banks, you have got the Department of Cooperative Banking Supervision, DCBS. Okay, they are in BKC. See, as I said, this ombudsman scheme basically worked on two principles. One is accessibility to the grievance system, and second is scalability, escalation. In case of urban cooperative bank, kindly remember, most of them are unit banks. The head office, branch, everything is same. So everyone is supposed to be available there for addressing your grievance. So you are not supposed to be running around to get your grievance redressed. Unlike a public sector bank where somebody in Calcutta may be dealing with a bank in Baroda or Bank of Baroda, or somebody in Chennai may be dealing with Punjab National Bank. So where accessibility and escalation both become a problem. That is where the ombudsman scheme comes in.
Whether these cooperative banks come under RTI?
No, they don't.
They don't, but anything related to that as a society, you can get it through the RCS.
The recent judgment from
So please
Aurangabad,
use the mic because we are recording it.
the recent judgment of Aurangabad Khandapit of Bombay High Court has ordered that the cooperative banks comes under the RTI.
No,
Very
see,
recent.
again I'll tell you, even CIC also, when Mr. Shailesh Gandhi was the Information Commissioner and all, had tried to give a ruling under the RTI Act, saying the inspection report also could be made available. That was challenged by the RBI in the Delhi High Court, and Delhi High Court set aside the ruling given by the Central Information Commissioner. Okay. Now, to the extent that you want information about that bank as a society, that is available with the Register of Cooperative Societies. And to the extent that it is about the public relating to banking, if it is something which RBI can share, RBI will definitely give. Maybe other than inspection report.
RBI will definitely not give us what you mean.
No, I think,
RBI refuses most
ma'am, let me tell you, of all the public authorities, if you look at, perhaps RBI has been more proactive on the RTI front.
Not at all. Absolutely different.
No, I'll tell you about sharing the information. If you look at
RBI
it.
center, and we are outraged at how badly the RBI behaves, including they didn't even want a program by Sailesh Gandhi because they said we have succeeded in opposing something that he said in the court.
No, but
Nonsense.
that has happened. But
Yeah, the Supreme Court orders that they're openly flouting, and all of us here, I mean, I don't mean this group, but we have been filing so many RTI. I think even the question about internal ombudsman, RBI has said you don't need to.
Ma'am, look, let's look at it this way. Not trying to defend RBI. Let's look at it this way. See, anything for inquisitiveness or sensationalism is fine, but it shouldn't create a situation where I'm endangering the interest of my own depositors and my own citizens. Tomorrow, if all these people create a kind of a run on the bank kind of situation, who is going to be affected? All of us. All of us are going to be badly affected.
So, not is not going to cause a run. Even that they said they don't need to.
Ma'am, see, I'll tell you, especially in relation to cooperative banks, the effect runs like wildfire because they don't have a geographic spread like that of a commercial bank. The moment you say Sahkari Bank, irrespective of the name, people. I was in that department for 4 years. I was there. I know it. It is.
Arguments have been made in front of the Supreme Court.
No. So let's look at it. Let's look at more as not as a defiance, but more as a.
I don't want to challenge all.
Not that, ma'am. I'm only saying. Let's look at the positive of it. That okay, at least the people in the street believe.
I'm just making the point, since they have asked the question, that you can come to our RTI clinics every Wednesday from 5 to 7. But on cooperative banks, I have done enormous amounts of work over the last 20 years. I have approached you also, something like Bombay.
No, because in fact I have encouraged some of the people. I'm saying, okay, Baba, kindly ask this through RTI so that it will strengthen my hands. So I have been telling people, you ask this through RTI, I'll give it to you.
But sir, what is the effect of the constitutional amendments 97
On
this RTI?
I don't know. I really am not an authority on that. And
Come on Wednesday, we can have a discussion on only RTI.
Sir, that
yeah.
Excuse me. I just have a question on the ombudsman. I made a complaint about the cooperative bank to the ombudsman. Ombudsman asked the Saraswat Bank and got the answer from them. And it was 20 pages answer. It contained xeroxes. One Xerox was completely black. All the other Xeroxes were not of the natural size of the original document, and they were not clear. I got all the copies through RTI. Then I decided to ask for the points. Then I got the copy of the original Ombudsman Sajwala's copy. She wrote something. I asked in the RTI, what is this? On what basis you made this complaint? Made this statement. The statement was, the bank acted upon my complaint, my saying. So I asked her to make a point and tell me out of these 20 pages, which is the page is giving you the answer. Now, the Ombudsman Sajwala answered me that is in the 20 pages. Then I made an appeal. Please listen. Made an appeal. In the appeal, madam told me that why don't you give him a 20 pages copy again? I got it again, but I never got the answer.
No.
Secondly,
let me tell you. See, point is,
yeah.
What was the deficiency in service? See, when you go to the ombudsman, be very clear. What deficiency in service you want to set it right? No, the point is, see, let's be looking at it. 20 pages is immaterial. Have you been able to pinpoint what is the deficiency in service?
Yeah, that was.
So, if you have been able to pinpoint it, based on it, first, did you take it up with the bank? That is the reason the ombudsman. That is my guesswork. That is the reason the ombudsman may have sent it back to Saraswat Bank. See, point is getting information. Pointing out deficiencies of service, there are two different things.
Yes.
When I go to the ombudsman, I must be very clear. what is the deficiency in service or where is the denial of service?
Yes, I told them.
No,
the
and
deletion-
secondly, it is not, see, somebody giving not statement and all. It should be relating to those 29 grounds of complaint which are listed out in the ombudsman scheme for denial of service.
I have a suggestion. Can we have a session only on the complaints that are filed with the ombudsman and
Why not?
rejected?
Why
Because, because you're now out of the bank, and I'm sure.
Even when I was in the bank, ma'am, I was always proactive. I was the one who has done 58 town hall events I have done, facing the people, facing the media. See, there's no problem. See, the point
I
is,
need to make a point here that when you were in the bank, we used to say that RBI is the most proactive regulator and we get answers. But in the last 4 years, things have changed dramatically. And there is a point that a lot of them have. Even on the MCLR, we've got cases which have come here. We've come to a dead end. Even as an organization, when we have pushed it to RBI, they do not even
about ombudsman
respond.
complaint, we can always have a session, no issues at all.
Correct,
But
because
be
we
very
have-
clear about denial of service or deficiency in
No,
service.
so we would
They
like
gave
your
the decision.
guidance on how they should frame it and whether they can do an appeal again. So let's proactively look at whether
Some
we can.
theoretical examples, if this happens, this is how you can take it.
No, it can always be done. There are no issues at all. There can always be done. And individual cases also we can do and no problem. That can be done. No problems. Okay.
Sir, one more point I wanted to point out. The decision was on the point, this is about joint account, that 9 months earlier than actual joint date. I joined on, say, 9th of May, and the decision was 9 months ago. How come is that? I asked her twice, thrice, then I made a complaint to DCBS, then the CEPD, then CEPS, without
No, I
any
think we need
answer.
to look at what the complaint was, what the deficient service
I'll
was.
give
Because
full
I'll
report.
tell you, if there was a deficiency of service as per the scheme and the 29 grounds of complaint, they wouldn't be disposing it off in this fashion. Okay. And let me tell you, even in the ombudsman scheme, 40% of the complaints are disposed of because they don't relate to deficiency or denial of service. All of them come in the nature of personal scores or misbehavior and all that. See, the ombudsman is basically there to look at banking service related issues.
So Kale, should
Correct.
we take his complaint?
Yeah,
and send
I can
it
give you
to
the full-
on one-to-one
full file,
basis
sir.
No
for
issues.
Guidance?
No issues.
Every page I have commented.
So my suggestion would be this: write to us at foundation@moneylife.
I'll give you right now, no issue.
And we will forward it
Yes,
to
sure,
him for
sir.
his guidance.
Sure, ma'am. Sure, ma'am.
Okay.
What is the,
Yes, sir.
madam, one second, please.
Banking ombudsman do not accept do not accept the complaint, service complaint of a private bank like say ICICI Bank or a foreign bank like HSBC Bank.
They do.
So
See,
to whom we are
no. See, I'll tell you. The scheme is very simple. The first is, even if you go to the ombudsman, what they first see is whether you have complained to the bank. First thing. And whether the bank has responded to you within the given time, 30 days, 35 days. If not, it is sent back to them. And while doing that, they also do the second check, whether your complaint relates to any of the grounds of deficiency of service as listed out in the scheme. If it doesn't relate to that, what they do is they write to the bank saying, since this doesn't pertain to any of the deficiency of service or denial of service grounds given in the scheme, you may dispose this off at your level. There's no, even if you have not gone to the bank, the ombudsman office does accept the complaints. And then at RBI's expense, they send it to the bank. See, I'll tell you, 2017-18, RBI has spent 4,000 rupees per complaint. For handling each complaint, RBI's cost has been 4,000 rupees. Now you add it to the bank's cost. And the complaints that RBI has handled is only 1,30,000 in this year. The bank have handled are around 2.1 million. So look at, if RBI has incurred 4,000, even the banks would have definitely incurred at least 4,000 per complaint. So,
Sir, I am talking about only those.
no, I am saying, so let's look at how to really improve the service instead of wasting this much money. See, if so much money is being spent and no resolution is being found, then we need to make the system more robust and make it deliver.
maybe you should tell the RBI to talk to us as customers. We have lots of suggestions on what they can do.
No, they
But
do.
the RBI sits in an ivory tower, does not
No,
talk
it's
to
not the Ivory
customers.
Tower, it is a very old building. It is a building which was auctioned by income tax and
Like an
RBI.
iron tower.
RBI, no, not ma'am. See, I'll tell you, there will always be phases in that life, but I have seen 34 years I was there. Always receptive, always trying to hear out the people and very, very silently doing, no, in the sense it is not something which many people believe to, always very receptive and trying to look at things in a broader perspective than mere this one. I mean, because never, see, at least at my time, till the time I remember, whether it was Raghuram Rajan or D.V. Subbarao or Reddy, Bimal Jalan, there was never standing on ego on any of these issues. We have been very open. Even when Damodaran committee, so many town halls, 57, 58 town halls I did, where Agartala. See, where when RBI didn't have an office facing all the Marxist elements and all that. No, we said, oh, but this is what, we have come here to listen to you. I mean, so they do it.
Sir, I just wanted to ask you, what is the role of DCBS, then the CEPD and CEPS?
See, CEPD is the Consumer Education and Protection Department, framing the policy for consumer education and protection, which all banks must follow. And they also act as a secretariat to the Deputy Governor for the purpose of the Ombudsman scheme. Okay, DCBS is the supervisory wing for the cooperative banks. And the other one you said?
CEPD, CEPS and...
CVPS is the Currency Verification and Processing System.
No, not currency. CEPS.
CEPS. CEPS is a section.
Yeah. What did it do?
It is a section of the CEPD in the regional offices.
Oh, I see. Then what is the
CEPD
role?
is the central office.
What is the
CEPS
role?
is the
Sir, these things are all on the RBI website. We request you
They
to
don't
go
do
to
that.
rbi.org.
Whatever they write, they don't do
Write to us, we'll help you to
Okay.
get these definitions and answers. This is simple stuff. So
Yeah.
with this, we bring the program to an end. Thank you so much, Mr. Kale,
My
for
pleasure.
giving us a broader perspective on a lot of issues and how so many decisions are made. I think this is the first time we've extended a session by half an hour. Normally, we take great pride in starting and stopping on time. But like you discovered, lots of questions still there. So I'm going to again request that can we have just a counseling Q&A session where we raise issues and take advantage of your vast experience. Yeah? So let's give Mr. Kale a big hand and thank you.